All right, let's get started. In this particular video, we're going to have a fair idea of what machine learning is about, right? So this is a gentle introduction to what machine learning is about, right from the scratch. We're going to, introduce what machine learning is about, and then after we get ourselves familiar with what machine learning is about, we will progress to take the various algorithms in machine learning, then we'll discuss it into details, all right? So in the subsequent videos, we will be taking each of the algorithms under machine learning, then we go into details, we study the concept behind it, and also we go to the lab and then we see how we implement that. Okay, so this particular video is a gentle introduction to machine learning, so let's get started. Now, most often what people confuse themselves with is what is the difference between machine learning and artificial intelligence. Okay, so let's start from there, and then let's try to actually distinguish between machine learning and AI in general. Okay, let's take it from there. Now, if you see the diagram that you're seeing on your screen, all right, if you see the diagram that you're seeing on your screen, we have let me bring my pen so that things will be clear to you. Okay, now if you see this diagram, right, let me move this thing a little bit down. Okay, now if you see the diagram that you see on your screen right now, we have artificial intelligence here, right? We have artificial intelligence here, and then under that you can see that we have several concepts that maybe you might have even heard of most of them, all right? Where you can see that machine learning is here, right? You can see machine learning over here, right? Being part of artificial intelligence. Okay, so basically what this diagram is trying to actually tell you is that machine learning is just a subset of artificial intelligence, right? It's just part of artificial intelligence, as you can figure out from here. Okay, machine learning is just part of artificial intelligence, and the machine learning itself, right? There are other concepts that also come under machine learning, right? For instance, if we take deep learning, right? If we take deep learning, or if we take neural networks, right? Deep neural networks or convolutional neural network, right? Natural language processing and computer vision, right? You can categorize them too under machine learning, right? So if we take each of them, right, if we take each of these concepts, they all come under the big umbrella of artificial intelligence. So you can think of artificial intelligence as the mother of all the concepts that you've been hearing in the lives of data science, or maybe machine learning, engineering space, right? All the concepts that you've been hearing, right? They all come under artificial intelligence. So you can think of artificial intelligence as the mother of all, right? You can think of artificial intelligence as the mother of all. All right, under which there are several concepts, right? There are several concepts under it, and machine learning is just one part of it. Okay, machine learning is just one part of it, and in this particular class, that's what we're going to concern ourselves with, right? With this part of the artificial intelligence, which is machine learning. Okay, that's what we are actually going to concern ourselves with. Okay, so now, having understood that machine learning is just part of artificial intelligence, now let's take this part only. Right, let's take this part only. Right, let me change my pen so that you can actually see what I'm trying to figure out over here. Right, let me change this color here. Okay, let me do that. Now what I'm saying is that let's just take this part. Right, let's just take this part. Let me include the deep learning. Right, let's take this part, right? So I'm trying to cut this artificial intelligence, while machine learning and deep learning is just a subset of it, right? And then we're going to move this to the next slide. Okay, let's do that. Let's take that part and then take it to the next slide. All right, let's take it to the next slide. Now, if you see the image that you have on your screen here, right? If you see the image that you have on your screen here, let me push this a little bit down. Okay, you can see that we have artificial intelligence here, right? We have artificial intelligence here. Then we have machine learning, right? So machine learning is just part of artificial intelligence, right? That's the connection that you can actually draw from here. And then you can see that deep learning is part of machine learning, right? Which all of them put together, right? All of them put together, I mean the machine learning and deep learning put together all comes under artificial intelligence. Okay, all comes under artificial intelligence. So those who progress to the deep learning class, you actually get to understand the concepts under deep learning also, right? But in this particular video, we are actually, or with this particular course, right, we're going to limit ourselves to machine learning, right? We're going to deal with machine learning, and then after that, those who will take it further to the deep learning class, you also get to understand the concept under that. Okay, now if you see this this circle that you can see over here, right, you can see that the innermost circle contains let me change this pen, right. You can see that the innermost circle, right, which is this one that you can see over here, right, contains the deep learning. Then you can see that we have machine learning here, right, which also, I mean, if we move one further, you can see that machine learning is here, right, which also contains the deep learning, right, which contains the deep learning. And then artificial intelligence being the biggest over here contains all of them. Okay, so basically you can actually see the difference. You can actually see the difference between deep learning, machine learning, and AI in general, right? As deep learning being a subset of machine learning, right? Deep learning being a subset of machine learning, and machine learning itself being a subset of artificial intelligence. Okay, so I hope that is clear to you that machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning. Okay, so moving on, we're going to actually be taking the concept and the machine learning one by one, right? The various algorithms and the various concepts that we need to know. We're going to take them one by one and then explain each concept to you so that you get to understand it. All right. So let's take it one more. Let's take it further. All right. So now, let's try to understand what machine learning is really about. Okay, let's try to get the basic understanding here of what machine learning is about. Now, if you go to Google and you start searching, start typing in what is machine learning, you might have dozens, I mean thousands and thousands of definitions that will pop up. All right, now let's break it down and then get to understand what machine learning is really all about. Okay, now let's take a simple example in your normal circumstance, right? In your normal homes, right? When you wake up and you're going to work, or you're going to school, you're going to college, right? Now what happens mostly is that you might find your clothes crumpled, right? You might find your clothes crumpled and you want to iron it, right? So what do you do at the normal circumstance? What you do is to pick the iron, right? You pick the iron and then you plug it into the electricity socket, and then maybe most of the iron are even having regulators where you can regulate it high or you can regulate it low, right? And some are even having some regulators that you can even turn it to cotton and nylon, right? So I mean, if you're using those kind of irons, you might be familiar with what I'm saying. Okay, now you understand that if you turn the iron too high, you might end up burning your clothes, isn't it? You also understand that if you turn it too low, you might end up not straightening your clothes as you wish to straighten it, right? You might end up not being able to straighten it. Okay, so just think about that example. How did you get to understand that if you turn it too high, you will burn your clothes, or if you turn it too low, your clothes might not be straightened as you want? Okay, just think about it that way. Now, what happens is that maybe you might have seen it before. Maybe your parents have done it before. Maybe your one of your elder brothers, right, bent their clothes, and you learned from that experience. Or maybe you yourself have bent it before, or maybe you have seen it happen before, right? So based on your previous experience, you're able to justify that if I turn this iron, right, if I turn this iron too high, I might end up burning my clothes. And if I turn it too low, I might not even straighten my clothes as I wish. Okay, and another example that you can actually think of, maybe with the iron, you know that when it is hot, you don't need to put your hand under the iron, right? You might end up burning yourself, so you don't do that. All right, so that is something that you have learned. With your past experience, that if something is very hot, it can burn your hand, isn't it? Now, let's take another example. Let's say that you're a branch manager for a certain microfinance, right? You're a branch manager for a certain microfinance. Now, you might be having several customers that will apply for a loan, right? You might be having several customers that will apply for a loan. Now, if a customer applies for a loan, based on your own experience, based on your, due to different customers that you have dealt with, right? You might end up granting certain customers the loan, and you might end up refusing certain customers the loan. Okay, now that is something that you have experienced. That is something that you have, gone through over and over again based on your previous experience or based on the records of your clients, right? Based on the records of your customers, you can actually detect that these customers, right? If this person is having this kind of qualities, right? These attributes, maybe the person is young. Maybe the person is below 18 years, the person is a student, the person is single, right? Now the person is unemployed. Now, based on your previous experience, you know that such people are not able to pay the loan when you grant them the loan, right? So now if a new customer comes in and that new customer is having such attributes, right? Based on your own judgment, you can say that I'm not going to grant you the loan. All right. Now that is experience that you have. That is experience that you have, and you're basing on that experience to actually either deny the customer the loan or grant the customer the loan. Right. Now let's take as an example. Maybe you have a movie stadium that people come and then watch movies, right? Now, or maybe you are an airline operator. Maybe you're an airline operator that you have a platform where people book airline tickets, right? Now, how do you actually figure out that during the weekends most people book movie tickets, right, to go for the movies, or most people travel during the weekend? So I'm supposed to give a certain discount during the weekend to attract more customers to my platform so that they will book more during the weekend so that I can improve or increase my profit, right? How do you actually determine that? Maybe due to your work experience, maybe you've been working for maybe 2-3 years in that domain, so you can actually understand that during the weekends people actually book more tickets. So I'm going to give a certain discount so that during the weekends it will attract more people to come and then book my movies or book a travel ticket from my platform, and that will increase my profit during the weekend. So that is something that you have learned using your previous experience and then making decisions in the future. Okay, now what if that happens when your customers are a little bit small, right? Maybe something below 1,000, right? Customers, you can actually use your own human intuition and then do that, right? But what about if we have 10,000 customers? What about if we have 20,000 customers, right? Or 50,000 customers? That is when the human capabilities get limited. Okay, that is when our human capabilities get limited. Now, when our human capabilities get limited, can we pass on our experience, right? The experience that we have had, right? Maybe based on the records that we have already recorded of our customers, right? Maybe we have recorded their names, their age, their sex, right? Something like that. We have recorded that their employment status. That's something that we base on as humans to either grant the person loan or not. Okay. Now, can we pass on that experience to the machine so that the machine will actually learn from that experience and then help us to make decisions, right? Just like we also learn from experience and then make decisions. Can we pass on that experience to the machine so that the machine will learn from that experience that we have, right, and then help us to make decisions, right, as quick and as dealing with heavy data, right, as possible? Can we pass on that experience to the machine? Now it turns out that yes, we can do that. Okay, so the experience that we have as a human, we can pass on that experience to the machine so that the machine will learn through that experience and help us to actually make good decisions in the future. Right? And that is what machine learning is all about, right? And the experience that I'm talking about here could be some customer records that you have, right? Or maybe on an Excel sheet, or maybe in your SQL database, right? So it could be some customer records that you have, maybe their age, their employment status, or something like that, right? Whether they have defaulted a loan before or not, right? So these are records that you have, and you as a human can go through, open your Excel sheet, read, and then see that this customer, I'm going to grant this customer the loan, I'm not going to grant this customer the loan. Okay, so all these are some of the things that you can base on as a human to make a decision. This is the records that we can pass on to the machine too, right? For the machine to learn through it and then help us to make that decision. Okay, and that is what machine learning is all about. Learning from the human experience to help humans make decisions in the future. All right, so you can think of it that way, right? So I think that actually gives you a fair idea of what machine learning is all about, all right? What machine learning is all about. So now there are some key things here that I would like to actually introduce you to, right? I would like to explain a little bit for you. Now, as I said, if you go to Google and you search for machine learning definitions, you might end up with thousands of definitions, okay? Now, in all of the definitions that you might end up finding, right, there are some key things that you need to note, right, about these definitions, right, that you might have concerning machine learning. Now, I don't actually like these kind of theoretical things, right? So I try to break it down for you so that you can actually get to understand it, okay? I try to break everything down. So there are several definitions over here, but this is quite classical over here, and it contains almost everything that machine learning is all about, okay? And I've broken it down here into some key terms so that you actually can figure out over here. So now if you see the first one here, so now this one here is telling you that machine learning is a study of algorithms and mathematical models, okay? Now we're going to see what this mathematical model means and how we're going to actually build this, right, as we progress in the course. We're going to actually see this, and I'll show you how you're going to do this, right? When we get to the lab, right, session, I'm going to actually introduce you to this, okay? Now, if you see the second point that I put here, you can see that it's saying that machine learning perform some specific task, okay? Now what does that mean? Now, if we take the example that we were talking about earlier on, that you want to determine whether to grant the customer the loan or not to grant the person the loan, right? Whether you should grant the person or loan or not, right? So that is the task that you want to you want this model, right? This model that you will build, that's the task that you want the model to actually perform, okay? That's a task that you want the model to actually perform. So it's whether you want to grant the person, this is just an example, right? So it could be whether you should recommend specific product, right? Whether you should recommend a specific product to a customer or not, right? So it could be different specific tasks that you want the machine, the model to actually perform, right? So we're going to actually see this as we progress in the course, right? And then if you see the third point here, saying that it will rely on pattern, right? It will rely on patterns and inferences. So if you feed your computer or if you feed your algorithm with the records that you have about your customers, right? Their age, right? Maybe it could be their age, it could be their gender, right? It could be their gender, it could be maybe their employment status, right? It could be their employment status. So all these things that this model will figure out and try to find a pattern, right? Trying to find a pattern that exists among these attributes that you will feed to the model, right? And then try to, based on this pattern that it will find, it will try to give you this that we call the model, right? Which we will see later on in our course, right? And to try to come up with this that we call the model, right? So to find the pattern and then infer from the pattern, right? And then come up with this thing that we call the model. And then based on this model, if a new data point comes in, right? If new data points comes in, we can base on this model that we have already and then determine the fate of that new customer, whether we should grant the person the loan or not. Okay, so that's what it actually is going to do to find a pattern between the input data, right, and then the output data or the target that you want to actually predict. Okay, now obviously it based on sample data, right? You need to feed the computer with some data. So this is the experience that I'm talking about. In human sense, right, we have our own human experience that we base on experience and we make decisions. Now the same experience is what we are passing on to the computer over here in the form of a data, right? We pass on in the form of a data. So maybe the customer age and sex and employment status is something that we have learned or we have seen as human beings, right? So we want to pass on the same record to the computer so that the computer will actually base on that data and then help us to make decisions. So we will talk about this training and testing and validation data later on, right? We will see it in the course, right? So we don't need to worry about that one. And of course, we are actually going to make predictions, right, and take reasonable decisions when we're able to build this model here, right? If you're able to build this model here, we can base on this model and then make predictions whether a new customer, right, whether we should grant a new customer a loan or not, right? So it's going to actually help us to make that kind of predictions. Okay, and here is one important thing that you need to actually understand, right? That we don't explicitly program the computer to do this. We don't. That's what is actually making the machine learning and deep learning in general actually making it more prominent in our society these days, right? Unlike the traditional languages like Java or C++, right? So in your C++ class, or if you know a little bit. If you know a little bit about Java, right? If you know a little bit about Java, you know that we actually program what we want to, get as an output, right? We program everything from scratch, what we want to output. But unlike this machine learning, what we do is that we give the machine learning, we give the data, right? We give a lot of data to the machine, right? We feed it with a lot of data, and then allow the machine to actually figure the things out by itself. Okay, and that's why we say that it is machine learning, right? It learns from the data that we feed to the computer, right? The data that we feed to the computer, that's what the machine is actually going to learn. So you can think of this machine, right? You can think of this machine as the model that we will build, right? As the model that we will build. Okay, so this model has already learned, right? It will learn from numerous data that you're going to, humongous data that you're going to feed it with. Okay, it will learn from that, and based on that, it will help you to make decisions. So we don't actually explicitly program the machine or the model that, okay, if you see this, if this that, or just writing tens and thousands of lines of code, right? Writing thousands of lines of code. We don't actually do that. We don't actually do that when it comes to machine learning. The only thing we do over here is to feed the model, right, with lots of data so that it can actually learn from the data and then figure things out by itself, just like human beings will learn from the experience, right? The same way that we allow the computer to do. More flexibility, more intuition like the human being, okay? And that is what making machine learning more prominent in our society these days, okay? And we're going to see more of this as we progress in the course, all right? We're going to see more of this as we progress in the course. Okay, now I like this definition that that is given by Casey, right? Casey is a decision scientist at Google. All right. Now what she says about machine learning is nothing but a thin labeler, right? It's nothing but a thin labeler. Now what does she mean by that? What is she is trying to actually say is that if you want to say, let's take the example that you can see on your screen, right? So now you have a cat, right? You have a cat. Now, as human beings, right? If we see this cat, if we see this object here, we are easily able to identify that this is a cat, right? We are easily able to identify that this is a cat. Now, can we let the machine also figure out that this is a cat, right? If we have numerous images, right? Can the computer help us to identify a cat among other animals? Can the computer help us to do that? Right? For humans, it's easier. We can actually do that because we have learned from our previous experience, right? When you're giving birth to, you don't actually know the difference between them. But as you grow up, you will get to understand that, oh, if I see this kind of object, I can identify it as cat, right? I can identify this as a bird. I can identify this as a dog, right? Maybe because of, you've seen your mother calling it a cat, or you've seen your father calling it a dog, right? So you are able to easily learn from them and then figure things out, okay? You're able to do that. Now, can we allow the machine to also learn from several dogs and several cats and then figure out what cat is and what dog is, right? And it turns out that yes, we can actually do that. If we feed the computer with lots of images, right? A lot of data. When I'm talking of images here, I'm still referring to data here, okay? So if we are able to feed the computer with a lot of images, right, of cats, it will be able to define patterns, right? If we feed it with just one image, maybe it will try to understand that, or if you see an object with this kind of a ear, right? If you see an object with this kind of ear and with this kind of eyes, right? With this kind of ears and with this kind of eyes, and then the shape of the nose like this, right? The shape of the nose like this, then it's called a cat, right? But it might make a mistake. Now, if you see the orientation of this cat over here, right? If you see the way it is sitting and the way it is looking upright, then the machine would not be able to identify this object as a cat, right? But however, if you feed the machine with thousands of cat images, right, which comes with we feed it with thousands of cat images which come with different orientations and different image styles of a cat, right? And different breeds of a cat, of course. Then it will be able to learn from that. It will be able to learn from the various features and then figure out that anytime I encounter any feature of this kind, right, which is present in this 1,000 data or images that you fed it with, that I'll be able to identify it as cat. Okay, so if we're able to do that, then our machine will also be able to help us to identify objects based on the previous data that we have fed to the computer. Okay, now if you've heard of computer vision, right, that is all computer vision is about. All right, and if we progress to the deep learning class, we come into contact with that. Okay, now what is happening over here is that if you feed the machine with a lot of images like that, as soon as it encounters and images of this kind, right, which includes several other animals, right, it will be able to identify, right, the object that it has seen before, the object that it has learned before, right, and then be able to identify that this one here is something that I've seen before, right, and I've labeled it as a cat, right. I've labeled it as a cat before, so it will just give a label to the image that you are going to feed to your machine, right? So if you feed the machine with several images of cat, it will label it as a cat, right? It will label it as a cat, right? So in the machine context, maybe it could be say 0, right? It could be say 1, right? So that's kind of a label that is going to give. In the human context, the name is cat, right? Right. So it's actually going to actually feed it, label it in that sense, so that if it encounters it anywhere else, right, it will remember it and say, oh, this is something that I've seen before, and the label that I gave to this thing was a cat. Okay, so this is a cat. So if we're able to let our machine to learn from our experience, the machine can also help us to make future decisions as well. All right, so that is what Casey was trying to actually bring out that machine learning is nothing but a thin labeler, right? Giving labels to the things that we feed to the computer. All right. So I think that is a bit clear to you, right? And we will be seeing more of this as we progress in the course. Okay.